Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. Got with me my guy, Burke, for this episode from the Often Daunted podcast. And Burke's a pretty happy camper nowadays because Indiana has moved on from Mike Woodson. He finished the year pretty well, right? He did okay. Unfortunately, Indiana didn't make the tournament, but as my brother-in-law told me, we can get to the new head coach. And that was what he was looking for. And Burke, I think Indiana fans feeling pretty good about this new head coach. Am I right?
I am feeling really good about it, and of course, as an Indiana fan, and I am going to say we win most off seasons without evidence, like
There you go.
just in our own mind. So of course, I'm doing all the back end research to justify this being the perfect choice. And right now, I'm liking what I'm seeing. It is nice to be able to sneak in and show the Big 12 what's up.
Yeah.
This is where real basketball is being played. Um, and yeah, it's crazy. It happened so quick. Like
hmm
everybody's still processing this, just educating themselves on what to expect right now. It's a lot, but right now I'm just optimistic with it all. I want to start by saying everybody who is like, this show's a Big Ten show, so 15 out of the 16 teams here are probably like, hey, how can we bash this
18
guy right
now.
now?
18,
Yeah,
Burke. Not even
God,
16.
yeah,
Big
jeez.
18.
They're all thinking, how can they bash this guy? And it was, not the big splashy name. And I just want to say, yeah, some programs need to go get the big splashy name. Like UCLA, 111 followers on X. Oregon, 135,000 followers on X. 167,000 for Purdue. 171 for Ohio State University. 180,000 for Illinois. And I just cannot stress this enough. Indiana with the 1M. Like there isn't it's 1M.
Okay.
So like I'm just whatever name it could be John Doe, who's a dirt farmer from Bedford, Indiana. You've never heard of him. Guess what? He's now a household name because the Indiana job makes you a household name. So
That it
it doesn't
does.
need to be a big splash. This is the guy. We need a guy who knows basketball. And that, like, from everything we heard, that press conference, no offense, Darian DeVries, I am your number one loyal soldier, but he's a dud on the mic. But you saw when he starts talking the X's and O's, that's when he lights up. That's when he gets electric. And that's what you want. Like after everything, all the pomp and circumstance, we need actual X's and O's to right this ship. And I think we got that here in Darian DeVries. And it is pronounced Darren. The
Mm,
I is silent in the most annoying way possible. But
mm.
hey, that's my guy.
Yeah, that won't be a problem moving forward at all when people start pronouncing his name and going through it like that. All right, so let's kind of rewind back to the beginning, right? I mean, this was what, February like 7th when Mike Woodson, I think that's the correct date, when Mike Woodson decides to step down. He's going to finish out the year, but he's going to step down. He's not going to continue to being the coach. And so the Indiana athletic director gets a chance to kind of get a head start, which I always tell people is a good thing. I liked that Woodson was finishing out the season because I felt like that was good for, not like having an assistant coach situation like what Ohio State went through, where you almost had to hire the guy after that. It could work out for Ohio State, but it's going to take some years with a brand new head coach, brand new first time as
Yeah.
well. So Indiana avoids that. They start going into search mode. Of course, they're going after the biggest names, right? Brad Stevens, everybody else, Billy Donovan was mentioned at one point. I mean, like the biggest names, which is what you should do in a coaching search. Even if those guys are going to say no, you still need to check in, see what the pulse is, and go after them. Well, eventually, Indiana gets to what everybody thought was going to be Ben McCollum. And I told people, Ben McCollum, I think he's going to be a good head coach somewhere. I didn't like it for Indiana. I felt like Indiana needs somebody now, and Ben McCollum felt like somebody that might take a couple years, to really invest in and really get his system together and him kind of elevate himself as he was just a D2 coach like what was it last year. So I wasn't super excited about that, but I thought it could go well. I like this hire of DeVries much more. DeVries coming in from Drake last year to West Virginia, his very first year at West Virginia, almost make the tournament. Obviously, Indiana fans want to make the tournament, but he goes through a tough injury with his son getting injured, and West Virginia's still able to get some big upset wins over teams that were favored over them. So you look at this whole situation, yeah, sure, Darian DeVries didn't make the tournament, but of all the coaches that didn't make the tournament, he was probably your best option. Indiana knows transfer portal is opening here soon. They need to get it together. They need to have a coach in place. They're going to lose guys to the transfer portal. We'll talk about that in a second. But overall, I mean, from what you were hearing beforehand to where it ended now with Darian DeVries, would you say you are satisfied with not getting maybe some of the names that were spoken out before, and you went with DeVries, or was there somebody like a Ben McCollum or a Chris Collins that you felt like you would have wanted instead?
I was talking myself into being all right with McCollum.
Mm-hmm.
I was. But then after looking into DeVries, and I didn't even know he was available like that because he had just signed that contract.
I don't think he was available for everybody.
Yeah. Goes to show, like, it's a big platform here, and the way they were able to go out and get him. Honestly, you look at the resumes between him and McCollum, and it's just some of it could be McCollum, riding the wake that this guy set. So I loved everything going back and just really digging into what we got here. I like what I see.
Yeah, I do too. I like the I like the hire here. Obviously, like a Billy Donovan or something like that would have been better. But that was never realistic, right?
Comparing the Ben McCollum thing, this guy went out and he has like top 75 recruits already committed to West Virginia, so he knows how to be in those rooms. He knows how to get the guys like that. But he also stressed in the presser, it isn't about just getting the guys; it's about getting the right guys. Right. And that seemed so lost on our program for a while. We had the names, we had the talent. By every measure, it should work. It just does not work together.
Yeah, and I felt like that was kind of what Mike Woodson hit this year a little bit. He got the guys, he had talent on his roster, but they weren't necessarily the guys that fit him. They weren't necessarily the guys that were going to not play hard for him. I don't want to attack their, commitment and energy level to the game or anything like that, but just they were not exactly fits to Mike Woodson and what he was trying to instill there at Indiana. So let's be honest though for a second. We don't want to turn this into just, an all IU everything, and like we do need to also look, are there any negatives or maybe some things that are worrisome to you about this hire? Not, you're not bashing it, you're not saying it's bad, but is there anything going into this hire you're like, okay, this does concern me a little bit, I want to see how it's addressed?
Yeah, there is the initial fear of the lunatic fringe. The Indiana fans who can just right out the gate add a little too much gas to the situation. But again, when I'm thinking about the numbers of everything, I'm just like, you know what? Everybody has the lunatic fringe. Ours is just more because there is more. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a lot of stress that comes with this. But when talking about who's right for the job, eventually, as we were going down the names, after I talked myself out of Brad Stevens' voice, I'm
sure that was very difficult. Right, that was very difficult.
The guy that's right for the job is the guy who hears all his agents, all the agents' friends, all their agent friends saying, yeah, this is a great job, but it is the most volatile one. I would not recommend. And I'm sure he heard that. But this is a guy who said, no, in spite of that, let's do this. Like, I want that. I want the heat. And you need somebody who wants the heat.
Well, and you want somebody who recognizes that the heat is not always a bad thing, right? Like, sure, you're 16 and 19, the heat is awful, right? But what does that heat look like when you're 22 and 7? What does that heat look like when you're a 2 seed, right? Like, you have to look at both sides of this, which is if you are a confident coach, you're not worrying about what does it look like when I'm 16 and 19, right? Like if you're a confident coach, you're saying we're not getting to that point, you know? If you're a confident coach, you're saying imagine how much they are going to embrace this. Imagine how much they're going to love this when we're 20 plus wins 3 or 4 straight years in a row, right? Now, is that realistic? In today's day and age in college basketball, it's much harder to do than it once was before. Not just for certain teams, but for every team. It's just much more difficult to do. But if you have that confidence to realize that that pressure is a privilege and that pressure is something that shows that people care, then you can turn that into, what it really needs to be, which is motivation and, fans being behind you. The only thing I'll bring up as a possible negative for me, and I do want to get your take on this, Burke, is Darian DeVries is not from Indiana. He is not recruited Indiana. And so I look at this situation somewhat similar to Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama, but not exactly the same because I think that's, a little bit more
that's fresh secluded. Off the Saban. Yeah, and
right,
it's
fresh off the Saban too. Yeah. So not exactly that way, but you're getting somebody who has not really ever recruited Indiana. You're getting somebody who's not from Indiana, right? He's from Iowa. He's recruited California very well. I think that's huge, and I think that is a positive. But you're getting a guy he's going to have to start making new connections. He's going to have to start getting more involved in the state. What are your thoughts on DeVries not being from Indiana and kind of the situation there?
My thoughts are he hasn't been from any of his previous spots, I imagine. And he went out there, he did the work, and he like what you hear about this guy is a tireless effort in the small stuff. And if he's able to go make the networking connections that he needed to at West Virginia, I am more than confident that he is going to have the legion of assistants to make the correct connections here. And as far as like not being from Indiana, maybe that's what we need. Maybe, yeah, we needed somebody not from here. Like it was enough trying to live up to Bobby. Right. A lot of people using Bobby's name to get indoors. Like you can do that. This guy, that's foreign to him to an extent that it hasn't been for previous coaches. And I like it. Maybe that means he'll work harder.
Maybe. All right. I like it. Good thoughts there. Let's pivot for a second. Let's look at the transfer portal. Right now, Indiana, unless, something's happened on Twitter, we're recording this at 9:30 at night on Wednesday night. So unless something happens on Twitter at 10 o'clock at night, we just completely miss it. Transfer portal so far, Indiana has lost Gabe Cupps. That happened pretty early on. And then just earlier today or last night, one of the two, I can't remember, Malik Renew enters the transfer portal. Are you concerned about losing those guys? Could you see more guys enter the transfer portal? What are your thoughts here on losing those guys and what DeVries has coming in?
My thoughts are, I'm sure DeVries has a system that he wants to instill, and I'm sure he wants to get the guys, like he said in his presser, he made it clear. He was like, we're going to have our sit-down discussions with the current roster, and if they can be a part of this, then and they want to be here, then yeah, we are all on board for having them. But the key was if they can be a part of this. He has a system. He has an idea of what he wants to see on the floor. That is a very refreshing thing for an Indiana fan who, like, it seemed like a lot of this. I mean, we were going sticker shopping, like, big name, let's get him. That'll build the hype train. Seems like DeVries is going to be far more calculated in how he goes out and assesses talent and how he builds a team, and that's just a part of him bringing modern basketball to Indiana. And just speaking about who else we're losing, we also are losing that Zerno commitment from that. Yeah.
He did say there's a possibility that he could come back, right? He did say that he's keeping Indiana in his interest, but yeah, I think if you decommit, that probably means you're not coming back. Yeah, probably. We'll see.
And even with the way it's coming in, that he plays an interesting position because we wanted him to be a big shooting big man, like a deep shooting big man, which was also a job that we had for McKenzie on this team, McKenzie Mgbako. But it's like when Tucker DeVries is coming into town, those two guys, Tucker DeVries is what we would want those two guys to grow into. Like, so it's like
that was where I was going to go next. Like, could Tucker DeVries and McKenzie Mgbako coexist on this team, right? I mean, McKenzie Mgbako, he wants to play the three. I mean, I know that was the case when he came in. I don't know if that's so much still a dramatic case now, but he wanted to play the three. He played the 4 points this season when they needed him to. I always felt like he was better suited as an athletic four, somebody who could be on the outside, especially when you have Ballo and what he is able to do on the inside. I always thought that was better, but I also understood Mike Woodson was also in a little bit of a situation where he probably promised Mgbako, or at least told him that he would mostly play at the three, so that was probably a difficult position there. But do you think Tucker DeVries could come in, coexist with McKenzie Mgbako, or is Mgbako one of those guys that you're like, he's probably going to test in NBA waters and might not be back next year, whether it's because of the NBA or transfer portal?
In his interview today, it seems like DeVries is he's going to do his due diligence to not make made sure to make a point that he is not making those promises to guys. Like, that's never how he's done it. That's not how he's going to start doing it now that he's here. He has a system and he's going to stick to it. And it's it almost is a personality trait to be a guy who asks that out of a coach instead of being like, I'm going to go take it. Like, so, I mean, maybe if his personality is just such a clash to because the program needs a recharge. It needs an identity shift. And if he's not on board with it, then I don't see him fitting in here. But McKenzie Mgbako, man, he is one mentality shift away from being the Big Ten Player of the Year. It's incredible. He has all the skills, all the attributes to be something phenomenal. And for whatever reason, it just is falling short. Maybe that was development. Maybe that was an indictment on development, and maybe DeVries is the guy to get the best out of him. But
he kind of reminds me a little bit of Keita Bates-Diop when Chris Holtmann first came in to Ohio State. Keita Bates-Diop, every Ohio State fan knew this guy had the length, he had the athleticism to do something special, but Thad Matta, never really was able to get it out of him. Now, granted, he was still young, so it wasn't like he was like a senior and he was coming back for his 5th year with Chris Holtmann, but he was a player that Ohio State fans had kind of higher hopes for. Chris Holtmann comes in, and Chris Holtmann, it was like some kind of weird mentality shift that Keita Bates-Diop is then turning into one of the best players in the Big Ten. He goes off to the NBA. I believe he may have just left the NBA a year or two ago, but he did a good job in the NBA for a number of years. It's hard to get a second contract there, which he was able to do. I do wonder if maybe DeVries coming in and giving that extra motivation, giving that extra coaching, whatever it might be, to Mgbako could be beneficial for him. We saw it a little bit with Trace Jackson Davis and Mike Woodson with what he was able to do for him as well. But I think Trace Jackson Davis was a little bit more of a household name before that, so maybe it does fit Mgbako better. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think that's a high possibility of that happening? I mean, you've followed Mgbako more than anybody else has.
Yeah, I've been pleading for it to happen all season. It seems like Mgbako is a streaky shooter. He plays within the emotion. I don't know, man. It's just tough to get a read on him game to game. It's a tough one. I cannot stress enough how incredible I think he is when he's on. Like, he is an unmatched talent. But when he isn't producing offensively, he is a net negative on the team.
Right. Let me throw a few more names at you really fast, and if you have any thoughts on them, let me know. And then if not, we'll get to our last part here. Miles Rice has the ability to come back next year. He was a sophomore. Luke Goode could possibly get a waiver to come back next year. I don't know if you think that's a good possibility or not. Anthony Leo, Trey Galloway, Umar Ballo, those guys are moving on, so you don't get any of them. But Caden Carlisle could possibly come back, and then the freshman Bryson Tucker.
He is gone
this past year.
Yeah,
Bryson Tucker's gone.
Portal, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Did not have him down. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thoughts on the other guys though?
The other guys, if they want to come back and be a part of it, and they are willing to buy in, because it seems like there is going to be a big if in these meetings. Like, DeVries, I think he's been told, it's been stressed upon him that there needs to be an identity instilled here. And if they aren't willing to buy into it, then they got to go. And that's just the way it is. New guy in town. He understands that they didn't make the promise to him. They made it to Mike, but it's just the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. What do we expect? Last thing, and then we'll get out of here. What do we expect from Darian DeVries? You know, from Woodson, you could expect a lot of big man play. You could expect big man development. Maybe it's not as much guard play. You didn't really see a whole lot of the screen action for the shooters to get to the outside. But you knew you were going to have good big men. Is there anything in particular from DeVries that you've seen from West Virginia that Indiana fans can expect coming into the program now?
All right. In my quick studies, big shout out to Tony Adranja out there crunching film for all the Hoosier fans. We're getting modern basketball. We're getting the 3-point shot. We're getting movement to get shooters open. We're getting a stress on the perimeter, and the Hoosiers have longed for that. We are getting that. We are getting a 65% winning percentage in games decided by 5 points or less. Now that is something. I mean, look at the season we've had. When it's crunch time, you can set your watch to the Hoosiers dropping the ball there. And
unless Trey Galloway decides to hit a three,
and
unless Trey Galloway decides to save him.
Yeah, I say 5 points or less. But like, if you think about the season, it's probably worse because like the Hoosiers had those 2-minute meltdowns in the last 2 minutes where it would become a 12-point game within 2 minutes. I
would love to see the numbers where like less than 5 minutes left, it was a 5-point game, and then Indiana lost by 10 or more. Like I felt like there were a number of those situations this season as well.
They have to have like 4 times the next team, honestly.
Yeah.
But with like Dolson, AD Dolson, he made sure to stress that. He was like, I had my numbers, guys. Look at how these guys manage late games because that has been such an issue. He wanted to see that, this guy has it all figured out when it's time to win the basketball game. It always comes down to it, and you need a guy that can win then. We just didn't have it. We're getting that modern basketball mostly because of his 18 years at Creighton. Like learning under McDermott, you're going to get that. And speaking on McDermott, did you happen to listen to the Field of 68?
No, I didn't.
Doug McDermott joined Fanta and Goodman to discuss. And Doug McDermott was just talking about how he's B-Rock is what they call him. I don't know what the name is, but B-Rock. And he was just saying how he's running in scout team, like taking the tarp off, talking smack. Yeah, it's something so refreshing. I mean, God. Yeah, just the spry nature that I hope to see out of an Indiana coach. It's going to be refreshing. But yeah, speaking on that Field of 68, I do want to say, Doug McDermott said Indiana's got their guy. He's a winner, and he's not going to stop until he wins. But then, of course, Goodman tried to poo all over it and rain on the party and just asking how he'd respond to the heat of the Indiana job because that's what Goodman's got to do.
Did he ask him how he would look in orange? Did he ask that?
No.
You don't get that reference. That was about a year ago, and that was maybe not Goodman's most proud private message.
Yeah. God.
Oh my.
No, and after all this, my final thought on the DeVries hire is Indiana and UNC need to start a series right now.
Oh yeah.
DeVries leading Indiana against UNC for the rest of history because of this tournament, please.
Well, Ohio State joined that CBS Sports Classic with Ohio State, North Carolina, Kentucky, UCLA. I've been saying for a while now they need to expand it and put, right now it's just like Ohio State or Kentucky, Ohio State or North Carolina. But now Ohio State and UCLA are in the same conference. So you can't really do that with them and it not be a conference game. So to me, they need to expand it and, maybe give them like a little bit of a mini tournament or something like that every year. I would be in favor of Indiana joining that. But again, that's more Big Ten in there. So who knows how that would work with the conference stuff. But anyway, getting off subject. Burke, thank you so much for coming on. Anything else you want to talk about with it? And then tell people where they can find your podcast at.
Hey, hope springs eternal. The Hoosiers have a new general, and all the soldiers need to fall in line. You know what? Everybody, whoever is holding out because they were wanting the splashy hire, guess what? Darian DeVries is a household name now. By just the sheer nature of the Indiana job, he is a household name. Get behind it. We don't need a salesman. We need a basketball coach, and I think we got it. You can find me everywhere at Often Daunted. Podcast coming out probably sometime next week, just recapping this and the end of the season, and counting all my blessings because, man, DeVries hasn't failed us yet.
Not yet. He's also not succeeded yet.
I made sure to keep that on there.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, Burke. Thank you so much, everybody who's listening. Podcast, please do give us a 5-star rating. Do all that stuff. That helps us out. If you are listening on YouTube, please do like, subscribe. That helps us out as well. This is a basketball channel. We also have a football channel. You can find that link in the description as well as the link to Burke's Often Daunted podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a good one.